First of all, can you introduce yourself? Like, who are you and what you do, what you like?
Sure. My name's Triston Goodwin. I'm a video game translator. I currently live in Logan, Utah, here in the good old US of A. Um, I'm not super interesting.
That's all right. So how did you get into translation?
It's kind of a long story. It started, my mom was actually an interpreter. She would interpret sign language, and so languages have always kind of been part of our lives. I started translating and interpreting back in 2007 while living in Argentina. A couple friends needed a translation done. It was actually a guidebook for Resident Evil 2. The guy he couldn't figure out how to save his game, and so he asked me to translate the manual for him. And I've been doing it ever since. So yeah, like I said, that was in 2007. In 2009, I started working in-house, and then I've been freelancing since 2011.
When did you get into games?
It's changed quite a bit. Video games was kind of the first thing I was doing. I was actually in Argentina helping as with like construction and things like that. So like digging wells and things and that kind of thing. And when I came back to the U.S., I found work as an interpreter for Mercedes-Benz, and so I interpreted for them for a little while. Mostly translated legal stuff, contracts, lease agreements. I did a little bit of like maintenance and that kind of thing, and then I did the same thing for Toyota. And then my freelance work has mostly been legal and financial and that kind of stuff with video games whenever and however much as possible.
What languages do you work with?
English and Spanish,
Oh.
and Dovizor.
What game is that from?
That's from the Elder Scrolls series. That's the language the dragons speak.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So did you receive a classical translator training?
I, I guess you could say I did. I was trained, like I said, while I was working in-house. That's really where I learned how to translate. And since then, I've taken a lot of classes. I'm actually still going here to the university trying to further develop all that stuff, just because you never know what you don't know. Uh, so like yes and no.
So would you call yourself a professional translator?
Yes. This is what I do for a living. That's what I've been doing now for 8 years.
How old are you?
28. I just turned 28 last month.
So you're a gamer yourself.
Yes.
Any favorite all-time game?
That's a really hard question to ask somebody like. I think probably my all-time favorite game was probably Baldur's Gate 2. It came out back when I was in high school. But I really like the Portal games, and I really like this Elder Scroll games. And I'm a little too addicted to like World of Warcraft and things like that.
So you're into RPGs and stuff that has a good, solid story.
Yeah, I like things with good stories, and I like puzzles.
Do you remember your first game?
My very first game, that was probably something on my dad's Atari. It was probably one of the old Mario games or something like that.
Did your work change a lot since you started working with games, like processes or tools?
Yeah, definitely. Well, like I said, when I first started, I was just writing stuff out by hand. And then I started working in-house, and we had our own dedicated systems and things like that. And now working as a freelancer, of course, I work mostly with Stratos. And, yeah, I've seen a little bit of everything over the years.
Do you use any specific tools besides Trados? Are there any tools especially for game localization?
Yes, there are a couple of them. Most of them are actually not really made for translation, but like I have copies of all the different game engines, so that way the developers can actually just send me the whole package that is their game, and then I can actually go through and translate things within the program itself, and that way nothing breaks when we try to send things back and forth. That was kind of expensive at the time. You can actually get all those programs for free now, which makes me very sad because I spend a lot of money on them. But aside from that, Trados is really one of the better tools out there just because it's so compatible to different file formats and everything else that we work with. So, you just open the file, it'll pop up in there, it'll take care of all the tags and everything, and that way we don't break the game on accident. And then aside from that, I also have WordFast. I have a couple other client ones. OpenOffice is great. But it really depends. As far as the tools that you need, it will depend a lot on the developer itself. Usually they're pretty good and they'll just send you a Word file or an Excel file. And if you don't have access to Microsoft Office, of course you can go with OpenOffice since it's free and it's fully compatible. But pretty much everything takes place in those. And if not, then you'll be working with the strings, and in those cases you want something like multi-term or Trados or something that, you know, can filter all that stuff out so you don't break the game.
So most of the time the processes are pretty similar to other translation projects?
Yeah, for the most part. The only things that are really different is at the very beginning, at the very end, because the very first thing you really want to do if you're able to is to actually play through the game as much as possible. And of course that's just so you can get a feel for context, so you can get an idea of what characters are like. And then at the very end when you're finished, you want to go through and double check to make sure everything makes sense in context, you know, make sure the characters are talking the way they're supposed to and things like that. Everything else in the middle is pretty much the same though.
And did the people you work with ever ask you whether you play or are a gamer yourself?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a lot like any other kinds of translations. You know, if you have a legal translator and you want somebody who has experience in the legal field, and same thing for medical or technical or whatever. And so one thing that's very important, at least from my experience with the developers I work with, and honestly I work mostly with indie developers, and I've done a little bit of larger studio stuff, but I prefer the indie guys. They want to make sure that you're going to take care of their baby. You know, this is something they pour their life into, you know, countless hours of study and work and everything else. They want to make sure you're going to take care of it. And so they want to make sure that they're giving their project to somebody who's going to be just as passionate and just as cautious with the translation as they were in development. Along with my resume, I sent out a copy of our link to my Steam profile so people can see what games I play and how much time I spent on there. And then often there's another one that's called Raptor, R-A-P-T-R, and that goes out as well. So just so they can see I've played a couple games.
What for you is the difference between indie developers and the huge studios?
Processes, timing, and the normal interaction. I mean, when you're working with an indie developer, then you're talking to the boss, you're talking to the developer, or to the programmer, you're talking to the guy who does all the artwork. You know, you're talking to everybody, and that's really neat. When you're working with a AAA studio, usually there's levels of bureaucracy, and you have to do extra paperwork and things like that. And you know, it's kind of the same thing as, you know, working with a small direct client as compared to working with a large agency. I personally find it a little bit harder working with the AAA developers, mostly just because they usually don't want to go through an agency directly, and my agency isn't quite big enough to do that kind of stuff yet. But indie guys are just crazier. They're more fun to talk to.
So, yeah, do you have a recent project you can talk about?
The most interesting thing that we've been working on lately is probably going to be that Karma Flow game. And what's really neat about it is the developers actually letting us go through and record the entire translation process. And we're going to make a whole bunch of videos on YouTube and Twitch and all those other things. And we're actually going to be able to show the entire process from start to finish. And that's really neat. No one's ever let us do that before. And so that's our biggest thing right now. It's a really interesting game. It's a rock opera. So instead of the characters talking to you, they sing to you. And it's really neat. It's a puzzle platformer game. It's all 3D, and it's got some really neat stuff to it. Very beautiful graphics. And like I said, the really neat thing about it, though, and what's going to be the big challenge, is, you know, how do you translate a song in a video game? So, you know, we're going to have to figure out subtitling and all that other stuff. But that's what we're working on right now. But yeah, I think we're probably going to have to go almost all subtitles with this one. Just because everything's being sung, we can't do voiceovers. They don't want to hear me sing.
So is there anything especially easy or hard with this game?
With this particular game, the hardest thing is probably going to be getting a hold of the script, or the lyrics, I guess. That and just trying to get the timing and everything else put together so that way we can still, you know, communicate the message and what's being said by the different characters, but we also have to make it sound like a song, in order to make it fit with the rest of the context. So that's going to be really difficult. Things that have been really easy so far, just been speaking with the developer. I mean, when we're translating a game, you really have to have really good communication with the developer in order to be able to ask questions and get answers quickly. And these guys have been really great so far. They've sent us a couple copies of the game. They've sent us all the text, all the scripts and everything. And so that part's been great. But the real challenge is yet to come.
So you'll be translating songs. Did you ever do that before?
Nope.
Do you think you'll ask someone who has experience with that, or just find out how to do it?
I would definitely be asking for help with this one, especially since the games can be translated into Spanish and I speak English as a native language. My wife is actually a translator. She works along with me, and she works in my reverse pair. She's a native of Argentina, and so she has a lot more experience, with like music and things like that. And so she'll be doing a lot of the translation. Then, of course, we're going to make sure that we can have it reviewed and edited and get other people's opinions as well, just because we want to make sure we're giving them the best product possible or the best translation possible.
So one of the critical questions, how's the payment?
It depends. It depends really on, well, it's just like any other kind of translation. If you're working through an agency, you're going to make less money. If you're going to be working with a AAA studio working in-house, then obviously you'll probably be making a little bit less money than if you're freelancing, but you get a steady paycheck and you get paid all the time. And so it varies a lot, just like in any other type of translation. Just to give you numbers, when I'm working through an agency, and there are a couple of agencies that still actually send me projects every now and then, I usually charge between 10 and 15 cents per word, and that's Spanish to English. And then I charge about $45 to $60 an hour for review, editing stuff, testing things in game, things like that. Last year we brought in about $34,000, which isn't bad. I have a couple of people who that I've worked with as far as like mentors and apprenticing, that kind of stuff. And a couple of them are working in-house right now. And one of them, they're actually both making more money than I am, but they work a lot more hours than I do. So, it's a trade-off. But yeah, it can be difficult. The best way to make any money off of it is definitely going to be working directly with the client. If you're working directly with an indie developer, they're used to paying between 25 and 35 euro cents per word, which is awesome.
Yes.
But you have to also keep in mind that taking on that kind of project, they're also looking for, not just the translation, but they also want everything to be reviewed, they want everything to be edited, they want everything to be tested in game, and it's the whole process. And so it's you get paid more, but it's a lot more work. And then, of course, like I said, you can go through agencies and get from 10 to 15 cents.
So have you ever done unpaid work, like for non-profit organizations?
Yeah, that's actually how I got most of my beginning experience in video game translation. I did translations for Curse, curse.com. It's a website where developers can host and share add-ons for a bunch of different games. So like I translated a ton of add-ons for World of Warcraft, for Minecraft, Skyrim, things like that. And what's nice about doing that is it does have a little section where it will talk about, or where it will show the developer information, and then it shows the translator information. So you can get credit for your work and use it as portfolio filler. So that, and then of course volunteering for my buddy who couldn't figure out how to save his game.
So anything you would say to young translators who want to get into game localization?
Pay attention to your teachers. Translation in and of itself is not exactly a friendly place for new translators. I mean, it's hard to get started, it's hard to find those first clients, and it's hard to get going in anything. And so you definitely want to pay attention and listen to those people who have that extra experience, especially, people like yourself who are able to answer those questions directly and, show the way of how to get to the goal, I would also suggest, especially if you're going through the freelancer route, take some marketing classes, learn how to make a website, things like that. and then just keep at it until you make it. I mean, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen right off the bat. I mean, I was translating for 5 years before I was able to dedicate myself just to video game translation. And a lot of it's because I wasn't paying attention to my teachers and I didn't know about marketing or anything like that. And so, yeah, pay attention, learn as much as you can, keep at it, because it's going to be a rocky road. But it's a lot of fun. It's hard work. It's a lot of things all roll into one, but it's great and I love it. And I play video games for a living. That's everybody's dream.